right, hello and welcome to another episode of A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles, with your favorite conservatarian, Jeff Charles, where we choose truth over narrative and principles over politics. And I've got another fire conversation for you guys today, another fresh perspective from what is going to be probably one of my favorite guests. I can already tell. I can always tell. And we're going to talk about more gun stuff and also from a female perspective. But before I bring her on, just want to remind you to like this video, share this video, and you got to subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. That way, whenever I upload an interview, you'll be notified, which I do every Wednesday and Friday evening at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard. Now, without further ado, I'm going to bring on the lovely, the mighty, the powerful Kerry Slone, the Empress of all known world, the founder of We the Female and Stilettos and Shotguns, and the self-proclaimed Queen of Sarcasm. Welcome to the program, sis.
Thank you. Is lighting okay? My boobs okay? We're all right? Everything good?
Yes, they're great.
All right, cool.
Everything is great. Wonderful.
Betty and Veronica are their names, by the way. I named them.
Really?
Yeah, we run as a squad.
So where's Archie at then? Don't answer that.
Are you assuming something?
not at all.
I'm a biologist, but
No, I'm just saying. You now have the distinction of being the first guest that I've ever had who was ever asked about the appearance of her décolletage. So somebody
had to do it. Somebody had to do it. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry, but I'm willing to take that burden, and carry that forward.
If only more people would jump on that cause.
I'm there for that.
Yeah,
women should be more confident in their boobs.
Yeah, well, think of how much better the world could be.
Facts, absolutely. There's more important things to worry about, like your boobs, than what Rob Reiner is spewing out of his butthole on I should probably ask you. Do you have a rating? Because
first off, I'd rather worry about your boobs than Rob Reiner.
Okay. Fair.
No rating. You can let it fly.
He is a boob, though. Does that count?
That's true. That is true. He's a boob with the butthole.
Yeah. I was going to say something else, but that might get you taken down. So I'll just leave that over here in the corner for later.
That's all right. That's all right. This is awesome. So before we get into everything, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? You've already let us know about Betty and Veronica, but what about you?
Yeah. So I spent 30 years in the beauty fashion industry, primarily beauty industry. I'm a master esthetician, nail technician, and I own a day spa. And just the real short of it, 4 years ago, I spoke out against a gun law in Washington State that I'm sure we'll talk about today. Mm-hmm. And it got reposted by a very prominent figure. Some of y'all might know him as Mr. Noir. And he happened to share this post expressing my true fear. I remember typing the comment and, just to post on my own personal social media and going through like a little bit of a mild, I don't want it to sound contrived or like I'm lessening, because I do have PTSD, but I had an anxiety attack from, as I typed, knowing what was potentially coming. And like I said, we'll get into that later. Sure. But and so he shared it everywhere. Enough people tagged him apparently that, and he shared it. And I realized that I had a voice that needed to be heard in a different capacity. There's a lot of great female gun rights activists out there. There are a lot of domestic violence survivors mm-hmm. that are pro 2A. Their voice is still just a little different than mine, and part of that is because I don't give a shit.
That helps.
It does help, and so and I don't poo them at all. I get it, right? That's where your comfort level is. That's cool. I don't care. I'll scorch the earth and then fertilize my garden with the ashes and the bridge with it. Like, it's just because uncomfortable truths need to be told. And I was never a big Trump fan, and I'm still not a MAGA, I'm not on that MAGA train or whatever.
I'm gonna have to push back there. According to President Joe Biden, you probably are.
Well, yeah. Oh, I most definitely am. And I am on the list to prove it. Unlike half these warriors out there with their BS saying that they are. I'm like, no, I got the receipts, y'all.
There you go.
That being said, one of the things I was appreciated was his candor.
Yeah.
And, I had often been told that I was essentially the female version of that, which may or may not be true, but it's ironic. This is kind of leading down a path I wasn't intending it to, but and we could talk about this later as well, but how it's acceptable among conservatives for him to say certain things or act a certain way, but not so much for a woman. And that's happened before. I've had that double standard. I've experienced that. So anyway, so I created this organization. My organization is called We the Female. And in short, our mission is to arm the women with education, confidence, and self-defense. Okay. I started with a defensive mindset class, which is still the core of what I teach and the passion about what I teach, which is how do we avoid these situations to begin with? And how do we begin to help women understand that they have to start taking responsibility for safety? Their own safety. So the class has very little to do with firearms or self-defense tools. In fact, the only components of that are one small section, which just talk about the pros and cons of different self-defense options so that women can make the decision for themselves what their best option is. I'm a gun girl. And I like to make the joke because I don't want your blood on my clothes, but the reality is that I'm terrified of knives. Even though I'm now learning to use them, and more importantly, what women need to learn is to defend against them. But I understand that not everybody's in that space, whether for their own personal experiences, whether where they live, what state they live in. That's obviously a huge factor. I think it's become very in the forefront of the conversation that even a lot of people didn't realize before, the state limitations on our ability to defend ourselves. And working with domestic violence survivors, being one, I understand that sometimes we have to help women learn that their lives are worth defending before we can teach them how to defend it. And that's a big passion behind what I teach. And that is literally where I sit right in the middle, where I've got the left wanting to take away women's abilities. They've literally weaponized women against their own best interest with that. But I do get a lot of crap from the right side where they just want to spew there shall not be infringed or just give them a gun. That'll work. I'm like, not always. It doesn't always work. Or when talking about abuse victims, they victim blame a lot. There's a lot of, well, I just don't understand why they stay. She must like it, or, choose better men and this and that. And what, and if she can't shoot him, then she's just anyway. So I work in this space in the middle where I'm like, yeah, cool. You want me to put a gun in her hand? I'm down with that. I need you to stop being an a-hole in the comment sections so that I can get more women to come in and listen. And being a free speech absolutionist as well, that's a fine line for me, because I absolutely support somebody's right to free speech. However, free speech also does come with consequences. Sure. And in my particular lane, those consequences come with somebody seeing those comments and not wanting to come forward to learn how to use a gun, because they don't see just Jimmy Bob making the butthole comment, right? It's those gun people.
Yeah.
Then it puts the black eye on all
the rest of the culture. And whether that's fair or not, it does. And it's funny to hear you saying that, because I go through the same thing. I mean, if you follow me on Twitter, like when it comes to, conservatives reaching out to the black community, but then you got people saying stupid shit like, oh, get off the plantation and all that stuff. I'm like, yeah. Okay, see, but black people will see that, and they already think you're racist because of what the media tells them. But also, like, they see you saying this stuff, and you're shooting yourself in the foot. And again, those people shouldn't represent the entirety of the conservative movement, but that's how we operate. That's what we do. I mean, so that's what people do. So I can definitely understand where you're coming from there.
Yeah, and this is a line I kind of tiptoe around carefully to make sure I articulate it correctly, because in no way am I Karen, the conservative side-ish side, because I'm pretty centered, and I'm not even libertarian, because, side note, if they could just stop arguing over who's more libertarian on the internet, they might actually get somewhere, because I actually think that more people in America are probably libertarian-minded
Yes.
But they see that wackadoo bullshit online and they need to just calm their ball sacks and shut up and sit down. And because they literally ironically keep that divide. And not because they push people one way or the other, but because they can't bring people in. And so anyway, I digress. I could go off. That's a whole other thing I could go off about. And I did, as a matter of fact, on a couple of libertarian podcasts. But
they know it.
Oh, they know it. And that's the thing. Like, but when you say things just because you want to be edgy or funny on the internet, or, that's clearly generational. And or to the other side where it can just be downright abusive. And that can tend to be some of the older, I can tell by the language you use, how people talk. It's it's not as hard to profile people as people think it is, simply by how they speak and, and the language that they use and so on. So, I work in this very weird space right in between, where with conservatives or in the gun industry / community in particular, I try to help them understand how we need to be reaching these more women, especially survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, and so on. And then on the other side, I have to work to help these people understand why it's about so much more. The Second Amendment is about so much more than just shall not be infringed. Every time I see that, Jeff, it makes me cringe, because we all know what it says. We know. Could you stop? Because it means nothing, right? All gun laws are unconstitutional. Well, no shit. Thanks, Captain Obvious. But for me, and we make the joke in my classes. My classes are all very uterus forward, right? They speak from the uterus, meaning that they're very woman focused and women centric, and they talk about how about the Second Amendment shall not be infringed. At the core of it, that's at the core of it. But for everyday life, it's about how you need to be able to defend yourself and your babies.
Yes.
And that starts to change the perspective a little bit. And honestly, that's when I can get some of the more centrist to left leaning, because not all of them are the extremists we see on the internet. We know
right.
that. But I've had them in my classes and actually flipped them when I've told them about these types of things, because hot take, get your pens, y'all. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is what we are blessed to be guaranteed with in our Constitution, right? Our forefathers, those guys were dope, man. They knew what they were talking about.
Yeah.
And if you go back and study past the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and I'm talking to you, 99% of the conservatives out there that think but you don't, because you actually have to understand the history behind why they wrote it, not just what the words say. But life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, we're blessed to have guaranteed to us in the Constitution. However, that philosophy can also create a self-focused society where we are pursuing our own happiness and our own liberties and what that means. And so people don't always understand what a particular piece of legislation means if it's not going to affect them.
That's true.
And so and we see this all the time, right? We see people become very pro-gun after they've been attacked or, what have you. But it's at the core of it, it really, to get down the philosophical rabbit hole, that's really kind of, we have been raised as a society to have, to know that we have the honor of being guaranteed this right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That means that we tend to self-focus more. Mm-hmm. And we won't be able to have that aha moment until we see how it affects us. And so my goal is to help women understand how it affects gun control laws affect us as women specifically, not just, as Americans.
Yeah. And I definitely want to get into that, because that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on. But
what did I say that prompted that? What did I do?
No, actually, I actually already wanted to get into this. There's a reason why I wanted to get more females on to talk about gun control and guns in general. Yeah. So I'm definitely going to touch on that in just a little bit. But first, I want to find out about you, though. Like, how did you become a gun owner? Have you always been into guns, or was there a pivotal moment, or how did that happen?
So, I was raised in the old school redneck kind of, my grandfather had guns around and loaded and left out everywhere. We knew we were more afraid of them than we were. Yeah. My grandfather, we'll talk about that sometime, because I should write a book about him. He was a fictional character. Like people would think like the way he lived his life, like this is the stuff that old Westerns are made of, like old movies and stuff. And people are like, this is no way this dude actually existed. And he did. And he lived hard. He died young. Had to leave this. I'm half Texan, by the way. My mother's side of the family are all Texans.
Okay. All right.
Because it's its own nationality.
It really is. I mean, when I became a Texan, I realized it. I was like, wow, there was just nothing like this state.
It is.
Like,
there is nothing. It really, and like there's the South, and like it's its own nationality, kind of. I mean, I think it's got its own. And then there's, you know, I guess maybe Midwest, right? There's regional kind of things, but Texas is on like it's its own thing. So I always make that joke. My mother's entire side of the family are all Texans. Midland, Odessa. Real Texas, like out, okay. Real, yeah. So we always had guns around, and we were more afraid of Grandpa than we were the guns, honestly. And so, you know, he took us out, and we shot the revolvers and the rifles and so on, shotguns out in the desert. When he had to flee Texas for questionable acts of moral turpitude, but that's a whole different podcast. So he settled in the California desert. I told you he was a trip, but I didn't own them as an adult. I'm very pro 2A. I've always been passionate history geek, and especially the Second Amendment. So I've never been anti-gun. I just didn't own them, and I'm finding a lot of people are like that, especially women. They're pro 2A, but they're afraid of guns. Right. That's been an aha moment for me, very eye-opening moment. And those are the women that really love my classes too, because I help them get over that fear. But fast forward to, you know, my adulthood, and my ex-husband beat me up on Thanksgiving, and moving, you know, through all of that, I went through the therapy. I was diagnosed with PTSD, which is very real. That's a trip. I mean, I still have issues with it where I'll react panicky because it's a survival, and, you know, it becomes a survival instinct. Yeah. And it's management. You can't really cure it. It's always a management thing. And of course, the longer you live with it, the easier that gets. But I would have nightmares. So I'd remarried. And so this is still, I'm fighting this many, many years later. My brain has rewired itself to not sleep. I don't really sleep well. And I would have, people have heard of night terrors where the paralysis, sleep paralysis. Well, I would fully wake up, conscious, and still have the paralysis. And one time, a couple times it was my legs, one time it was my arms, but the one that terrified me the most was my voice. I couldn't scream. And I went down my hall banging to get somebody to wake up so that was a trip. And people are like, are you sure you weren't asleep? I'm telling you, I was not asleep at all. It was bizarre. Anyway, so my husband is deployed. He was active duty Navy. He's now retired, but he was active duty. He was gone more of our marriage than he was home. And he was leaving, and I had gone a very long stretch without sleep. And I just was, you know, that starts to really wear you down. Yeah, it does. And the nightmares were just getting to me. And so we went and bought a shotgun for me to have on my rail. We put on a rail, like a little redneck rail on the side of the bed. So, and these exist. You can find them on Amazon. They're cool. They just slide between your mattress and your box springs, and it holds, and it's just like a hook, and you put your rifle or a AR or whatever. A shotgun, anything on it. The nightmares all but went away. Wow. So what years of therapy couldn't do, the shotgun made a huge difference in helping, just knowing I had it there. My nightmares were things like I would shoot him repeatedly when my abuser, and he would still be alive coming at me. Just crazy. Your brain is a trip when it can manifest, So, but they didn't go away completely, but they settled down a little bit more. And so it was interesting to learn how that kind of worked for me. And then a few, many years later, this law situation comes up in Washington State. I'd owned pistols by this point. I had handguns, but I was just an American gun owner. I wasn't an activist. I wasn't, into all this. And then, 1639, for those of you that aren't familiar with that, it actually made national news, a big deal. Washington State introduced it not long after the Parkland shooting.
Okay.
And weird how they had that written so fast. Well, the reason they had it written so fast is because it was all of the failed legislation in Washington State, and they threw it into one pile of steaming shit and then set it on fire when they reintroduced it. So it had all kinds of the great talking points in it that we all, hear, right? Safe storage in your home, and if you don't have your gun stored safe and it's stolen and used in a crime, you're charged with a felony. It redefined what an assault rifle is, blah, 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 right? All this kind of stuff. But what was hidden in it that people did, because people don't read, even if they say they do, they actually don't read.
Nobody reads these bills.
They don't. They read the summaries and they listen to what the news says. And, so the people who think they're informed voters really are only reading the summaries. Well, they didn't even really put in the summary what this little component was. And it was that when you now sign a 4473, for those of you that don't know what that is, it's the background check form from the FBI that, gun grabbers tell you doesn't exist. But when in Washington State now, when you sign your 4473 for your background check, it's an automatic waiver of your medical record, and they can deny you the purchase of a firearm based on what they find in your medical record. Well, Kerry, what is it that they'll deny? Jeff, that's a great question. So the question, the answer is...
That was a good impression of me.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So they don't tell you. It's not defined.
So they don't even tell you what it could possibly be in your
Correct. They don't tell you what it is. So on top of that, they just tell you that the people making the determination are the Washington State Health Authority. Who are they? That's another great question. They don't tell you. And that was one of there was two things that were aha moments for me. When learning how to really, I've always been an informed voter. I've always read those things, even though they're convoluted. Mm-hmm. But what never hit me, again, because I was looking at it with a different perspective now, from more of a personal perspective, right, is where legislation bites us in the ass isn't in what it says. It's usually in what it doesn't say. And this is one of those cases where, if Margaret is pissed at her husband that morning and didn't change a hormone patch or whatever, and if she's in the Washington State, we don't know. Is it one person? Is it a team? It's not defined. And as far as I know, I don't even know if they have one set up yet. I don't know. They probably don't. Because as far as I know, and I feel like somebody would have said something to me by now, being in the lane that I'm in.
Yeah.
That I don't think anybody has been denied yet. So I think it might have just been a virtue signal, but it's regardless.
It could still be used that way.
They can use it at any time, right? And if you're already on their radar, they can, because it goes that the background checks go through the state. Because in that bill, they also added you have to automatically wait 10 days to buy an AR now. So the expanded background check. So even if the FBI comes back cleared with your background check, the state will still make you wait 10 days before you can get your rifle. And they make you take a safety class. Well, the safety class is online.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It's nothing. It's virtue signaling, really. So I spoke out about that, like I said earlier, and I said, for those of you that voted for this, let me tell you what you just did to me and countless other domestic violence victims in Washington State. You just put us in a position where we may be denied the purchase of a firearm to defend ourselves from our abusers. And my abuser had stalked me because the system failed me. And I learned very quickly how horrible. I knew the system was bad to begin with, but man, especially for domestic violence, it is awful. My abuser was charged with a felony. The holding charge was a felony. This was another little tidbit that I had learned at that point. This was 15 years ago. There's difference between holding charges and formal charges. So if you hear holding charges versus formal charges, because the cops will hold you on charges.
Right.
Then the prosecutor comes in and looks at it and says, can we get him on this? No. Can we get him on this? Right. Because let's be real. They don't give a crap about justice. They give a crap about their win and loss records. Yes, so they'll look at their criteria based on the crime, the alleged crime. And what else they could charge them with. And that's why sometimes you'll see them held on one thing and then you'll see a bunch of other charges get thrown on, whatever. Or stuff taken off. It's because what they think they can and can't get. So female prosecutor sitting with me now, mind you, he beat me up on Thanksgiving. This is now Monday morning for the arraignment. And I, of course, literally head to toe black and blue. You could see the fingerprints on my neck where he picked me up and threw me across the room and tried to choke me out. She said, we're going to drop, he doesn't have any prior, so we're going to drop this to essentially a gross misdemeanor. I don't remember what class, it was gross misdemeanor, it's part of class C misdemeanor. And I looked at her, I said, why are you doing that? She says, well, most victims don't want to testify against their abusers, which is true.
Right.
And I said, well, I am, because I sure as hell don't want him doing this to any other woman.
Mm-hmm.
And this bitch still only charged him with a misdemeanor. As she sat in front of me, I couldn't eat for 3 days because when he punched me in the jaw, my cheek got caught between my teeth and cut my cheek up, and my teeth were loose and fractured. I got crowns on them now and stuff. So, and I know it sounds like I'm kind of heartless I talk about it a lot, which has helped.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, and now it's more about not the attention for me and that, it's more about using my story to help other women.
Yeah.
So it comes across kind of, I understand, total side note, random. I used to think, gosh, these Holocaust victims seem to be so detached and matter of fact about this. Well, it's because they've told the story so many times that, I remember back when I don't know how old you are. I'm old enough that we had Holocaust, survivors come and talk to us at school back in the day. And I remember that, and that stuck with me. And so I digress. But so they went in, they charged him with, gross misdemeanor, and he was also charged with a DUI because they actually caught him on the road after he'd taken off, and so he had a holding charge. So they would have had him. She could have absolutely had him on that and nailed him with a DUI and did not. And because he had no priors, he was now able to, and she knew this, she knew it. It was all her plan. He could plea out a diversion agreement, meaning that he could go to therapy and be on probation for 2 years until he shows that he successfully completed his counseling as an abuser and stayed and kept his nose clean for so many years. And then it would be it wouldn't even be a conviction for a misdemeanor. It would just be successfully completed a diversion agreement.
God.
Yeah.
I mean, we complain about being lenient on criminals today, like these woke DAs.
Yeah.
But this isn't new.
Yeah. Yeah. This is not new. It is not new at all, especially in certain states. So certain states are different than others, obviously, as we all are learning very quickly. So that was the thing. And so I had an order of protection, difference between order of protection and restraining orders. So I had order of protection, which means or a no contact order. So he was not allowed to have any contact with me at all, none. And because I kind of categorize abusers. There's like the idiot that gets drunk and acts stupid. And then there's the calculating sociopathic kind,
right.
Narcissist. And that's what I was married to. And the really, really, really intelligent ones that know how to work the systems. And so he did. He took a second job saying that he had to take a second job to pay for his lawyer because I was putting him through this horrible divorce, right? Because of course it was my fault.
Yeah.
Right. And he took a job delivering pizzas with the condo that I owned in his delivery territory. And I was like, how does he always know where I'm at? Why is he always asking me? It was weird. I'm like, okay, so he's stalking me. So I would start looking and I could say, well, now I know it's because he had taken this delivery driver job, which allowed him to be justified to be in the vicinity. So of course he never broke the protection order and came within however many feet it was on there. I think it was 1,000 feet. But he could be in my neighborhood, so he could see where my cars were, or my car was, what time my car was there. Yeah. So that happened, and then fast forward to 1639 getting passed, I realized I am not safe, and the government, the state is certainly not going. And the military was a joke because he was ready to get out of the military. My ex was active duty at that time, and they just, because he had less than 60 days, they didn't charge him. They swept it under the rug.
Jeez.
But then wanted to use my statistics. Then like the family center or whatever, they were calling me, asking me information because they wanted to add me to, and I said, get the fuck, sorry, hope you could beep that out if you need to.
No.
But I told them that. I said, no, you're not getting anything from me. I said, you couldn't be there to help get justice for me or hold him accountable. And now you want my story my case, for your statistics, you can kiss my ass. I believe those were the exact words that came out before I hung up the phone. Yeah. So I wasn't going to give them anything. Nothing.
I mean, these people will push laws that restrict gun ownership, which places women disproportionately in a vulnerable situation.
Yes.
But then when they're abused, they will rally to protect abusers.
Right.
It makes absolutely no sense. I can't reconcile that in my mind.
Cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
And it kills me because that's where my husband, when we first started dating, I made a comment about not being a feminist. And he said, you're the most feminist woman I've ever met in my life. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he says, I'm a feminist. And that was when I learned to understand what real feminism versus this extreme alt-left, or as Mr. Limbaugh would say, feminazism, is. And the difference. And sadly, that is right, because it's always, they're not the majority that they want you to think they are, but they're the loudest.
They're the loudest. Yeah.
And that always
the microphone.
And they always get heard, correct, especially by the media that supports their agendas.
Yep.
So that's where my whole unique lane about speaking for advocacy came from, was understanding these two pieces and how they work together, but also understanding how the anti-feminist side is kind of proverbially, and no pun intended, but shooting themselves in the foot by not speaking up against the anti-feminists, or the feminazis, because they don't want to look like that. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to, right? They're ladies. They don't want it. That's not how we act. It's not how we handle things. But how's what you've been doing working for you?
Yeah.
So you need to get loud. You need to start getting very loud, and you need to start pushing back. And furthermore, if that's not your game, cool. Start becoming more supportive of those women who are willing to be out there to do that for you, and stop calling them names, and stop saying that they're too inappropriate, or they're not really what I've gotten all kinds of names, called. And not just me. There's other women like me too. But
let's talk about that. What can you go a little bit deeper into the flack that you get from the right, you and also others like you? Because I know there are other female gun influencers as well. Like what do these people say to you? Because I haven't really heard much about this.
So have you seen any of that on Twitter? Like when I push back against that on Twitter? I don't know if you have or not, but I get, of course, a lot of it's been in the gun industry / community specifically. Right. But I've been called, if you were just a little bit softer, if you were a little more gentle with your approach, if you weren't so aggressive and assertive. I actually have screenshots, because I keep all the screenshots. Literally 4 years of screenshots from some of your very prominent YouTube ladies as well that you all love, who have absolutely slammed me. Ooh. So, and I have you just, you'd probably get a bigger lane or be heard more, if you weren't so abrasive. And one of them, I actually said, but you voted for Trump. Well, I don't like the way he acts, but he's really our best option right now. Oh, okay. Right. But you voted for him. So why is it okay? Why does he get a pass and I don't? Oh, because he's a man. Oh, got it. Got it. Okay. To which they had no response. When I said, how come he gets a pass and I don't, there was no response.
Have they called you woke for even making that point?
I've been called woke before, but not by those ladies, because they know better. They know better. But I have, on the internet, I've been called that. There's some of the conservatives, especially some of the younger generation conservatives, people don't realize that they poke fun at the liberal men for being soft, but and hating women or whatever, but they can be pretty hateful. I mean, I've got some pretty nasty stuff that's been said to me, because it's either been taken out of context, or they just assume, right? It's the internet. You know how this stuff goes, right? Everybody wants to be edgy and cool on the internet. But what disturbs me even more, and a few people dismissed me about this until I posted some links, but it started as a joke and is now snowballing into a legitimate movement, albeit small, thank God. But like the younger millennials and the mostly Gen Zers that are over 21 or even 18, voting age. They want to repeal the 19th Amendment.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's real. Like it's actually real. And
Yeah.
what's even more frightening is I know women that support that.
There are.
I'm like, why the
heck?
Well, that's because the liberal women are the ones that are acting crazy and causing all the problems. I'm like, so you don't have the tits to stand up and push back against them and maintain your rights? What the hell are you doing to yourself?
No. Just use the government to silence them and prevent them from voting. That's the conservative way, isn't it? It's
ironic. It's my cat Cracker just said yes. He just walked in the room.
See?
And my 16-pound, 17-pound all black cat named Cracker. There's a story there, yes. But he was named that at the shelter, and we didn't, because we have very immature senses of humor. We have we had to keep it. So anyway, he just walked through the room. But that's frightening to me, that they think that it won't, so you see on one side, you see they're not going to stop at Roe. Right. And then you see the conservatives, oh, you're being ridiculous, knock it off. I'm like, but you're wanting to repealing the 19th Amendment. What makes you think they wouldn't stop at that?
Yeah, of course they wouldn't stop at that. They want to keep going. Like, it's obvious what they're trying to do.
For sure. And
that's just a starting point.
And here, this is one of my talking points for my class. My God, that cat just opened the door.
Is he expecting company?
No, he's probably hungry and wants food. Which we don't need, but that was a trip. I've never seen him open the door before. Now it's going to explain a lot of things around here. So it blows my mind that women don't see this, and I talk about this in my classes a lot. And like I said, they're very uterus forward. So if men are welcome to take my classes, but just know coming in, you might get picked on a little bit to express a point. And men that take my class love it because they're actually real alpha males.
Right.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. If you have to tell somebody you're an alpha male, you're not an alpha.
You might not be. Yeah.
You're probably not. So the alpha males are always the ones sitting back going, aren't you cute? Yeah. So they're women are a very, if not arguably, one of the most powerful forces on the planet and have been through history. We have literally been the rise and fall of empires for millennia. There are scholars that can and like, I know your listeners probably lean more conservative. So just please stick with me when I'm saying this to you. When I start talking about the Bible, I'm not poo-pooing your Bible. I just want you to hear me. Okay. Arguably that's when the Council of Nicaea met. That's a reason that they think that the 12 chapters that were taken out were of women. And that is sorry about that. I apologize for that. So I thought I had my phone on Do Not Disturb. Apparently I didn't. So we, and Queen Elizabeth, Cleopatra, right? I'm going way back, but we've literally been the rise and fall of empires for millennia. Ladies, stop lowering yourselves to be equal to patriarchy. You're already running it.
I think there's tons of truth to that. There are women in the Bible who brought down empires, and like you look at Esther, she stopped the first attempt at Holocaust against the Jews. Like
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that more centric to conservative ladies need to embrace that and speak from that space. Because when they can start doing that, then they can push back in a classier way, but still be heard and get vocal. And it's, not just ladies. I talk about this from the gun rights perspective because they've weaponized women against our own best interests for a lot of things, but especially gun rights. The one thing that makes us, don't get me wrong, I know some deadly ass women with their hands and some blades, some knives. But that being said, in general, for the general population, one of the best equalizers is a firearm for women. Yet because these politicians, and I'm just going to have to call a spade here, like the Democrats have been smarter about understanding how women move and think. And that's why they've weaponized them for gun control. All of those groups are led by women.
Yeah, Gabby Giffords. Yeah.
And because they know that women get hurt, especially if they're mamas. And at some point, I'm really hoping to see some of these more conservative women start pushing back. And there's some that are out there, they're great. But just standing up and saying, you're not going to take my gun is one thing. Starting to tell people why and have them understand how it's going to affect them personally.
Yes.
Is how you're actually going to make something change. Just standing up and typing it on the internet or this or that, that's not going to cut it. You've got to organize. You have to get in your communities. And this is just guns. This is in general. I come from I live in 2 states now, Washington State, because I'm suing the state over that law, 1639. Gun Owners of America I'm their plaintiff in that case.
Oh, okay. Gun Owners of America. Okay.
Yeah. And then I have a homestead property called, it's Bayfo Farm. Look around and find out. here in Georgia. And so okay. I live between both spaces because I still have my court case open. So I have an apartment there. But I grew up in Southern California. I was born in the South, I was born in Georgia, was raised in Southern California.
Oh, really?
And then, yeah. And then I moved north. I was
born and raised.
In Southern California?
Yeah.
I grew up in Paris, out in the desert.
Oh, okay. So I was in the LA area for the first half of my childhood, and then we moved out to Rancho Cucamonga.
So you're still a little further north, I guess east of where I was, or excuse me, west of where I was, because I was back then that was desert.
Yeah, you were way out there.
Yeah, it took us 25 minutes to get to a grocery store, half an hour to get to a grocery store. Yeah, and it was nothing there, nothing. And March Air Force Base and hot air balloons.
There you go.
We're out there, but I moved, graduated from high school in Oregon, and that was in the 90s, early 90s. I just have a really good Botox guy if you're trying to figure it out. How old I am. So I've watched, and then I lived in, settled in Washington State for 20 years. And so I've watched the de-evolution of these cities, especially Washington, and to see where it was and what it's become under Democrat leadership. And I say Democrat leadership because it's sad to see that we've gotten to this point of identity politics and the echo chamber it's created, and social media is absolutely guilty for this. Absolutely. Yeah. Hands down. More than the mainstream media, I think. I think the mainstream media is actually fed off the social media.
Yeah, it has.
Push of that. But to see this Democratic leadership destroy these cities, and then it's like a cancer, and it spreads to the suburbs and it spreads to these other areas. And once it starts, it's almost impossible to get stopped. And can you stop it? Yeah. Virginia enters the chat. We just saw what happened there. So for the people that say that voting doesn't work, that's not true. Voting, once they're already in office in DC, forget it. Especially if they're reelected. Maybe after their first term, Cawthorn, we just saw his stupid, right? Get taken out.
Woo,
so that
was
happen.
A train wreck.
It kind of was. Okay. It wasn't kind of, it totally was. So yeah, first, second term, maybe, but anything past that, you're done. Like you're not going to get them out.
Yeah. They're ensconced at that point.
And once they are there, forget it. So where you can still make a difference is your state, and even more so your local government, your sheriffs, school board. That's a big one. I think we're all saying now, and because we're seeing school boards, having conservatives sitting on them more and more now, even though you shouldn't be one way or the other. But that being said, this is kind of where we are. So that is where the core of that should all be coming in. I like to say that Republicans, and I think that you would probably agree with this after I've seen some of the things that you put out there, are absolutely the worst at the long game.
Oh my God.
They're terrible at the long game.
Yes. Yeah.
They're awful.
Such short-term thinkers. Yeah.
Oh, it's like, oh shit, we have an election in 6 months. We need to change, red tie, blah, 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 blah. And then they get all pissed off when it doesn't go the way they want it to go. And, then they get all, butt hurt, and then they go back to their corner and lick their wounds and talk shit on the internet and not do a goddamn thing till the next election. And then all of a sudden, 6 months in, oh no, we got to do something. I'm like, But the Democrats have clearly demonstrated that their long game is money. Well, and literally in some cases.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a reason why Beto O'Rourke was almost my senator. I mean, they do play the long game.
They do play the long, and they know what they're doing. They'll play for decades, man, and it's brilliant. And I don't like it, but I don't like government. I'm an anti-federalist, so I'm like, do we really need a president? I'm very isolationist and anti-federalist. I'm like, we need to fix our own crap before we are over here in these other countries and stuff. So, and I feel like Trump was a little bit more like that to a certain degree. He was definitely more when he'd get questioned, he says, why are we paying for everything? Make these other people pay for it, and
exactly
kind of pull us from that. So I can cringe at most of his stuff, but I can disagree with a lot and still acknowledge what's right.
No, you can't.
Clearly, right.
No, you can't do that after 2020. You either love Trump or you gotta hate him. You can't call balls and strikes.
No, it's true.
Kerry
That's
Slone.
fair. You're right.
Yeah.
Clearly,
What makes you think you're special? No.
Well, you're right. Yeah, I'm just a woman.
Yeah.
What do I know?
Exactly. Everything you say has to be positive or negative about a politician, and that's it.
Right. Yeah. So silly me. I'll go back to the kitchen. What kind of sandwich do you want, Jeff? Did you want your crust cut off? Yeah. So so obviously being in the gun industry, I'm assumed to be I'm assumed to be a MAGA nut. I'm assumed to be a very Republican. And I definitely lean conservative for sure. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But I'm not far in. I'm not completely red. I like to refer to myself.
You don't have a team sports mentality. Like, even if you lean conservative doesn't mean that you're not going to call out bullshit on the right too.
Fact. And I wish that more, I shouldn't say that's not fair. I was going to say, I wish more Republicans did that, because I actually see that happen a lot. And they do. But I don't see that on the other side. I'm sure it exists. Actually, that's not true. I need to rephrase that. I don't know what the hell they were thinking with that Biden speech business. I'm like, yo, who was the designer of that set? The optics on this are terrible. So there were some Dems that were like, whoa, this wasn't a good idea.
Yeah, even the Washington Post called it out too.
Yeah, it was a little, and CNN, I guess CNN put filters on their, like, somebody showed video of like before and after a break or something, and they like tried to like soften the blow of the seam on it and stuff. But my husband was saying too that, I don't remember, I might be getting this wrong, but there's something about the Marines being there, and like they're not usually there for certain speeches.
No, they're not.
Yeah, right. So this was weird that he had the military there too. It was just kind of weird. Yeah, whoever did that was definitely, because look, he's not doing that stuff, right? That's his staff. And that's his people. Obviously whoever's on his staff clearly is a communist who set that up. And the fact that he's got dementia and his wife should be charged with elder abuse, and Kamala, who allowed that to happen, right? Because she's really the decision maker more. I think her and Obama are really the ones making those decisions. They allowed that to happen. I'm like, yo, I thought y'all were even smarter than that. Come on, because that certainly didn't help optics,
Sure did.
But I did see that. That being said, they always had some caveat with it. They couldn't just call it out. They always had, well, if we're going to win, we can't do this. And I'm like, no, why can't you just hold them accountable and be like, bro?
Yeah, bad idea, homie.
yeah. And they don't. So that's kind of there's always almost like an abuser, right? Well, I'm sorry you made me. Well, we should have done, but.
Well, I mean, it's and I want to get back to gun control, but you reminded me of something.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. But remember when Biden with this whole COVID thing, trying to push those vaccines, and then when people weren't doing it, when he didn't reach his goal by July of last year, then he's like, okay, now you're making me crack down. Now I'm going to get you fired if you don't do the vaccine. You're making me do this. Like,
right.
It's the same type of principle.
Yeah, it's been, the COVID stuff was rough. Watching a lot of that and the way people acted, and I struggled with that one. My business really suffered through that. And I was just thinking about this today, actually, how everybody was so quick to support restaurants and want to make sure restaurants stayed open and stuff. I'm like, listen, fat ass America, why don't you guys actually start supporting gyms and like Ann Smith and well, we need to support these businesses, support a freaking gym.
Yeah.
Instead of McDonald's or the local, greasy, right? I get it. Where I'm going with this is I'm a day spa owner. And they didn't have the same energy for salon owners,
Yeah, they sure didn't.
But Nancy's drunk ass was in there getting her hair cut.
She sure was.
So I thought it was interesting how, and weird, it was kind of like, oh, we need to make sure we're supporting these small businesses, but restaurants, like, why? But that's what you heard predominantly. Well, at least in Washington. Was that across the country? Did you experience that?
No, yeah, people were advocating for restaurants too. Although there was a beauty shop owner, or she was a salon or something like that.
Yeah.
And she stood up and because they tried to shut her down, and and then she kind of became the figurehead.
Yeah, she's in Oregon. We follow each other on Instagram, and then I know that there was one in Texas too, a nail salon.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, maybe it was a nail salon. I can't remember if she cut hair or if it was a nail salon, but yeah, she stood up against it and got a lot of attention.
Yeah, and I actually publicly I got a letter. Somebody reported because I went in and worked. I didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a letter from somebody reported me, and I laughed, and I went on a video. I think it was on my first account that got shut down. And that wasn't the reason it shut down. It was definitely far later than that it did. But where I read the letter and what it says, and they can't, the letter is a lot of strong words that say nothing because they can't do anything. And I literally laughed about it. And I'm like, it says right here, like, they can't do shit to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and let them try, because I will burn the lawsuit, the subpoena, or whatever, to court on a cauldron in the front of my salon just as quick as I will, because it's bullshit. Like, let's go to court, let's go. I'm willing to, I've already put my name on it once. Let's do it again. You know what I mean? Okay. I'm a personal believer in eat, sleep, sue the government, and repeat. Yeah. Because we, the people, have to start holding them accountable. And so we, the people, because we are the government, and we, the people, have forgotten that. And so ultimately, uncomfortable truth conservatives, we are responsible for where we are.
It is. I've been saying that too. I mean, especially when people complain about rhinos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, these people are horrible. I agree with you, but whose fault is it? I mean,
right.
Are we showing up during primary season? Are we getting involved in our local governments? Because that is the most important.
Right.
I mean, the TV won't tell you that, but it is. It is.
Right.
Absolutely is. Yeah. Are we showing up for our state government? No, we're not. Okay, well, that's our fault.
Yeah. And so I take a lot of heat for that one. But that's the reality. And, and I was part of that group. I was guilty. It was just, I didn't have the time. I didn't have the resource. Whatever. I didn't have blah, 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 whatever. Right. To get involved. Didn't want to get involved in politics. That was always, that's a big thing that people say. I'm like, well, you better start getting involved because they're involving you.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to affect you whether you're into it or not. Like it is. So I wanted to ask you though, I mean, when it comes to gun control and women, like you talked about that Washington law, and I'm sure you're familiar with Maj Toure, right? And one of the things he says is all gun control is racist. I agree with that. I've written about it, but I think it's also sexist too, because
we did a partnership T-shirt that says that, actually.
You did? Okay, awesome. Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Oh, that okay. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. So what are some other ways that the gun control movement, either through legislation or through their influence campaign, is disproportionately impacts women?
Well, I mean, are you meaning just women in general, or like domestic violence victims, or women?
All of it. Whatever you want to talk about.
So limiting. Okay, so standard capacity limitation is huge, and I mean that's actually for everybody. But if I've got 10 rounds, 6 rounds, whatever, and I miss, because chances are you're probably going to. I mean, I could show you videos of people, very well trained, like you're going to miss if you're not training regularly, and even some of them can miss. It's high stress situations. People are moving at you. Stuff happens. And that attacker actually gets to you, you know, we're, you know, not as physically matched as a man, to be able to do that. When women are stalked or with abusive situations, background checks and having to wait for a background check puts us in very dangerous situations. Having to wait for those red flag laws, that is absolutely one of my lanes.
Okay.
Absolutely one of my lanes. In fact, I was humbled and honored when GOA said that you're kind of our informal field expert on that one to talk about red. I I understand them very well because I understand how they can be used against domestic violence victims that are still in this situation.
They're solid.
Yeah, they're great. I love those guys over there. Those are, and Eric Pratt, I love you. I know I make you cringe a lot because he's an amazing human being. Like he is that Christian that is everybody should aspire to be, truly. And I say stuff all the time and he's always like, and but he loves me. And he just puts up with so much for me. And so I'm always kind of poking fun at him a little bit for that because he's he's an amazing human. And he's been doing this a long time. And he wrote a book actually, and the book is fantastic. I recommend people reading about how to talk to people about gun control. But so red flag laws, if a woman is still in her home and they're gun owners, the laws can be used against them. He can have her red flagged and have her weapon taken away from her to be able to defend herself. That especially matters when they've come out of their abusive situation.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Oh, it's going to get better. So they can be, you know, manipulated with like this ties into like the 1639 thing, right? The therapy. Women won't go to, in fact, I have a DM from somebody who said that their wife is, or not their wife, but somebody their wife works with. I have to pull up the DM again. And long story short, she's in an abusive situation and she won't go to therapy or try to get help because she's afraid of him having a red flag and not having a gun to be able to defend herself.
Wow.
Because once you have any sort of therapy on your record, now it can justify any red flag, you know, call.
Yeah, if you have, say, PTSD and they can look at your medical history and say, oh, we're going to take your gun away. Wow.
Yeah. So, and I've been on a mental health podcast to talk about that. And they're like, we never thought about it. I'm like, I know you didn't.
Yeah, that's gross. That is disgusting. Like that.
Yeah. And it sounds good on the surface, right? I mean, they sound great on the surface, but you get into this. I had a volunteer at one time who her ex, she had gotten away from her abuser. She was a gun owner. And he kept calling her over and over and over again. And she finally turned her phone off. And so it was late. And middle of the night, cops come banging on her door. And so she was like, what the hell's going on? Obviously goes to the door with her gun in her hand. Thank God it ended well, because we know nowadays how that probably would have ended. It would have been different.
Yeah, think about Ryan Whittaker in Arizona.
Exactly. Or any number of any of these, especially you get a no-knock. I mean, that's a whole other story, but it doesn't necessarily apply here. But so she answers the door, and he had told the cops that she was suicidal and had a gun and he was worried about her. Now, what a lot of people don't know, spoiler alert, is that red flag laws have actually existed for a really long time. They just didn't have a name. They've been in other forms and stuff, particularly for the mental health thing, suicide, and so on. And they've been in existence for many years in the VAWA, is what people nicknamed it. It's the Violence Against Women's Act.
Right.
So they've been around for a while. And like I said, in theory, they sound great, until you get into understanding how they can impact a woman's ability to defend herself. So Jerry Nadler, I'll send you this if you want it, because it's actually really good. It's one of my better reels, spitting some facts out. But I take the when they just did this whole assault weapons ban, all this crap. Where God bless Massey, I don't know how he does it, but I watched him look at Salini, and I was like, I DM'd her too. I said, how? I said, you are like doing Lord's work. I don't know how you could, how did you, there's no way that I could sit there and not lose it, knowing that this guy, knowing he's lying, he knows he's lying,
Of course.
you know, and that theatrics and stuff. And you know, I know wanted to see Bassie's like, I don't know how he does it, or anybody. Anyway, so it's a trip. But so now there's reading from this study that was done, and I've got the clip. I might have posted it on Twitter, but the clip of him reading this study that says a woman is 5 times more likely to die if a gun is in the home, blah, 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 justifying gun control and using domestic violence victims because they love to, the 2 biggest weapons for gun control are domestic violence victims and children. Not necessarily in that order. That depends on which way the wind is blowing and what they need for a political agenda at the time.
Yeah.
So I have that study, and it's 20 years old. And it's actually a shit study, as most of them are, because it kind of talks in circles, as all this gun control stuff does. But the very next paragraph, so what he reads, the very next paragraph says, however, studies have shown that a woman, I'm paraphrasing it, an abuse survivor is more likely to survive if she has a firearm after she is out of her violent situation.
I'm shocked.
Right? Same study. So I actually screenshotted it and highlighted it, and I put it up there with his. And yeah, so it's I love to read policy, and I love to teach people how to read it and how to do that kind of stuff, and be like, but this is really what it said. So that's the kind of stuff that makes me bonkers when they go after women. And that was one of the big things. And Eric Pratt and I talked about that, was this VAWA and the red flag, how they wanted to expand it to the boyfriend clause. Thank God they pulled that. And of course, I take a lot of heat from, well, you want your abuser to be armed, you know, and all this kind of crap, right? Ironically, sometimes that comes from the conservatives that support gun control to keep guns out of the hand of violent and mentally ill people. Put a pin in that. We'll talk about that one later, and let me piss off some of your viewers with that one. I was like, holy crap, this is really bad news. It was essentially the way it was written. Again, the way it was not written. A woman goes on a date with a guy. I could go out on a date with you, Jeff. And are you married, by the way?
No.
Okay. Before I'm like, your wife, I was going to like totally turn that into a funny joke if we're married, but you ruined it for me, Jeff. Anyway, so, right, we go on a date, and you don't want to see me again, right? No, we weren't vibing. But it pisses me off because I'm
adorable. I mean, of course,
right? Right? Exactly. So for whatever reason, and the way that law was not written would have given me the leeway to be able to call 911 and say that you had assaulted me, and you would have been right. They would have taken your guns.
Wow.
I'm paraphrasing it, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
But they're still after that, by the way, and they'll get it. Because what does that do? That literally opens it up for anybody to say that about anybody that they're in a relationship with, for any reason.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So I'm glad that they pulled that out, but they'll sneak red flag laws in. I'm getting ready to go head to head with one of the state reps here in Georgia over this one, because she said she wasn't a red flag supporter, but she voted for a bill about something with medical hospitals and medical care, and red flag. It was a red flag law on it. So, and she's new, so I think she might not have understood, like really new, like appointed. She was appointed a year in or something. Like, I think she's really green.
Oh, I see.
So she's not going to sit down and have a little talk.
Yeah. I think you need to give her some education on that.
I already told her, I said, look, I will, when my lawsuit's done, make no mistake about it, I will run and replace you if I have to. I don't want to be a politician. I'd rather be able to call them both out on both sides. But I'll tell you what, I will run and absolutely unseat you by exposing your votes and what you're doing here. Most people don't do that. They don't know how. So, by the way, shouts to Herschel for those ads he's putting out on YouTube. What? Those are pretty good. I don't know if you've seen them, but, oh man, I don't know who was doing his PR, but kudos to you. He's like, well, Warnock was a deciding vote to give felons millions of dollars in COVID relief. And I'm like, oh,
I think I saw a headline on that. Yeah.
Well played, team. He's going to win, I think.
What I'll say about him is that for the most part, I think his team knows what they're doing.
I do too.
They're keeping him away from the cameras, which,
Yeah.
Because I know when he speaks, he does come off a certain way, which I don't really care. Because if you get elected and you've got the right people around you, then you'll vote the way you need to. But that can be a detriment. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But he has a good chance of winning. He's 2 points ahead right now, and he was like 5 points behind a couple of weeks ago.
So Warnock, he ran over his his ex-wife, right? He was abusive.
He sure did.
Yeah, and I call that out any opportunity I can. But I right after the primary, when he won the primary, which was almost a given.
Right.
By the way, he actually grew up this region out here that I live in, the Southeast region. I guess he grew up like 30 minutes from where I live. So he's out here a lot and stuff. My goal is to work with him once he gets elected, is to work with him about some gun control
That'd
stuff.
Be awesome.
It would be awesome. I'll make it happen because I just, you just do.
You just do.
Right? You make things happen if he's your state rep. By the way, y'all, your state reps are obligated to meet with you.
Oh.
Yeah, especially if you're in their district. They actually are obligated. They cannot deny you a meeting. They cannot deny you a chair. Even the national ones, they may blow you off for a while, but if you keep on them, they have to meet with you. So, anyway, so yeah, I was reading after he won the primary, a bunch of Warnock supporters on some pro-Dem stuff and talking about him and, all of his issues and this and that, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, it's unfortunate that he's going to win. Like they were already like literally the day after the primary conceding Warnock's victory. So I can tell you this, Jeff. I mean, I know I'm kind of digressing back off the gun thing, but moving from Washington to down here, and I travel a lot for work. You don't need any other proof of cheating in this last election than Georgia flipping. Because there is no freaking way that Georgia flipped.
Yeah, so now you're going to get me banned.
That didn't happen. Say that again?
So now you're going to get me banned.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. You can edit it out if you want.
Well, it's funny.
Truly, you can. You can edit it out if you want. But I'm telling you, it didn't happen.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I was talking
in Minecraft.
Say what?
In Minecraft.
In Minecraft, yes, exactly. That's what it. No, I was talking to my friend Donnie Anthony. I don't know if you know her. You'd like her if you did, because she's an anti-federalist too. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you would love her.
I'm kidding.
No, she's a girl.
And?
Oh,
I'm married. I'm just teasing.
But yeah, we did a video on this, and she mentioned some of the same thing, but they took that video down. I was like,
yeah, you can edit this out if you want. I mean, go ahead, or just like put a big beep, or like, actually, what'd be funny is to put like one of those, remember, well, you're younger, but when the TV would go off at the end, like a technical difficulty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put across, we interrupt this for politically controversial technical difficulties, and they come back on and put it in the outtakes on like your Patreon or something.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask though, when it comes to the women that you work with, especially the ones if they haven't become gun owners yet, but they're hesitant. What are some of the biggest misconceptions they have about guns and gun ownership, especially for women?
So, one of the things that I have come to learn is that fear of guns is absolutely regional and cultural, for sure. Women in the Midwest and South can be fiercely pro 2A, but are scared of guns for whatever reason, or their husbands or boyfriends just handle and keep them safe, right? That's a whole mentality that just blows my mind. And I'm talking 19 and 20-year-olds. I ain't talking 16, 17-year-olds.
Right.
I just experienced it recently, a couple days ago in my little town here in one of the stores. But they'll come take, I think one of the biggest examples is they'll come take the handgun class all day long, all day, but are terrified of ARs because of what they've read and been told. And so I created a class called Intro to ARs, which does nothing but lets them come out. We give them the basic overall anatomy. I don't get into the weeds on stuff. And then we let them shoot them so that they can experience shooting an AR. And I've got wonderful sponsors that that have worked with me on that, Battle Arms and Sons of Liberty. Thank you for that, helping me make this happen. And I've not had a student yet that's been willing to come take the AR class that hasn't looked at me after and went, that's it. I went, that's it. I said, now you understand why they're great for women for home defense. And I've got a video. I didn't get the videos of them shooting, but afterward I was inspired to interview. The first class I ran, it was just 3 women. And one of them was in her 50s, one of them was in her 30s, and one of them was in her late 60s, early 70s. The 30-ish-year-old one, she was the one that said, I don't want to dislocate my shoulder. I don't want to learn how to use them. I'm like, so you brought a Ruger LCP to class. That's going to hurt your body more than an AR. And I said, do you trust me? Right? Famous last words. And she did.
Right.
She came out and she went, I've learned that I want a SIG 365 instead of or even the 238, 380, because it doesn't have as much of that recoil, that we call it snapping turtle that a Ruger has. But they were blown away. But I love it because this little grandma in this class, she goes, I think I want one of those now. I said, exactly. I said, they are phenomenal for women for home defense. And wait till I show you pistol caliber carbines. Because those are like if I had my ultimate choice for a woman for home defense, I'd AR for sure.
Right.
But oh man, right neck and neck there is a PCC. Because even the women because I teach a lot, we call them Granny Oakleys. We get a lot of little ladies that come in, and sometimes the ARs they can get a little heavy, for them.
Right.
And teaching it well, for the listeners, well, just get them a strap. I'm like, shut it. Like, I'm lucky they're on the range shooting a gun, let alone, okay, MEAL Team 6, get off your gravy seal ass and show me your training video. And then, otherwise shut up and sit down and take a seat in the back of the bus, learn something. So, PCC would be ideal in that kind of situation for them. My goal is to start getting some ladies out for that too. So, especially because they're kind of a hot button right now. Mm-hmm. And my goal when somebody leaves my class, I have some videos on this, but I could send you a clip of one of them. It's actually, I love it. One of my students caught it, and it's me just in my space. Like I was like this. Something must have happened right before to get me, a couple days before. It must have been something happened because I said, when you walk out of this classroom today, I want you to understand that every single one of you have now become advocates for the Second Amendment. And not because it says shall not be infringed, but because now you understand how important that Second Amendment is to defend yourself and your babies.
Yeah. Yep.
And I was on it. And so that's my goal when they leave, is it's not just to have them know how to use a gun. I want them, I had a liberal gal I flipped. She says, I'm pissed off. I said, wait till the end of class. This was 15 minutes into class. Because I told her about the 1639. So wait till the end of class. And she was hot. Boy, was she mad. I said, now you get it. I said, and now you're an advocate.
So getting him to shoot the gun, educating him about that's kind of what pushed, because I'm assuming that at least some of these women were hesitant about becoming gun owners, but that kind of pushed them over the edge.
Yeah. So, a lot of violent crimes have, a lot of what's going on in Washington State is one of those where they've got, the police are not pursuing a lot of stuff now. And it's not gotten it ain't Illinois level. They just went full retard over in Illinois. I'm like, yo, don't you know? Apparently you did not see the movie Tropic Thunder. You never go full retard. So I'm like, oh man, I can't believe they did that. But I can't wait to see it. We just get some popcorn, sit and wait and see how that's going to end for them.
Yeah.
But there's definitely been obviously an escalation in crime in the city of Seattle alone. They have actually decriminalized homeless people sleeping on your property. So if you live in the city of Seattle, the city limits, and a homeless person pops a tent and starts camping on your property, you can't remove them.
Wow. Not even Austin got that bad because there was a homeless camping ban that was in effect for a long time. Then about 3 or 4 years ago, the communist city council decided to rescind that ordinance, which meant that homeless people could camp out anywhere in the city, including in front of City Hall. You could walk on the sidewalk and you'd have to walk around tents and all that. But it didn't get as bad as Seattle, though.
It's bad up there. Well, because before they did that, they started the needle exchange and, all this. And so I personally have experienced going through town and seeing people just crapping in the streets and shooting up and, needles everywhere. It's bad. It's actually worse than you even see on the media. And Portland's even worse. And I lived in Portland back in like the early 90s and stuff, back when the cool music scene. I was there for all of that stuff.
Is the dream of the 90s still alive in Portland?
No, it's all dead. Oh, you mean keeping Portland weird? No, because it's not even weird now.
I'm talking about the show Portlandia.
Oh,
that's part of the theme song. The dream of the 90s is alive in Portland.
I forgot about that. I forgotten about that, but I know that, obviously keep Portland weird is kind of their motto. I'm like, yeah, but y'all went past weird. Like you went stupid,
Yeah. No, that's Austin's motto. They stole that.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, you keep Austin weird. That's the thing. It's like painted in graffiti in a bunch of places here.
That's unfortunate that because what happens after it goes weird? It turns into and those people that do some things on the other side.
Yeah, they're trying. They're trying.
Yeah, mostly peaceful protests and all that kind of stuff. So, you know how they do that, right? They start with like the mayors and stuff and the Bloomberg's leadership conferences.
Like, what do you mean?
So Bloomberg works, right? Soros is bigger stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Bloomberg is working, and this is all under the radar. People don't see this stuff. So Bloomberg works at the city levels and helps to fund mayoral candidates, state representatives in some case, but city councils, all this kind of stuff. And then he has a leadership camp, for lack of a better word, leadership training program that these new mayoral elected mayors to go to and train. And that's how they've done that. So that's how they've infiltrated in the cities too. Yeah,
kind of like Soros has done with the district attorneys and all that.
Exactly.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. And so that's how they've done that. So that's why you got to run in those city elections. And, up in Washington State, they, during 2020, they had a couple of, controversial people like the Patriot Prayer, group and all that. Mm-hmm. They had some of the women, run for city councils out in or city council school boards in some of the cities and won. Because they know, because they understand what we're talking about that long game. And sing it that way. So, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So you have to, if you want to take these cities back, you got to get active, and don't stop if you get a small victory, right? You've got to keep pushing, look long game. Like right now, I'm doing some campaign advising for a couple people up in Washington State. Mm-hmm. One of them being the sheriff. He probably won't win this year, which frustrates me. Did I show you that video about I don't know if you saw that. Well, I don't think you did because I had to take it down until my legal counsel told me I could bring it back up. We'll put a pin in that because it's over guns. And you want to be outraged? Y'all want to be outraged? The listeners, wait till you hear. I mean, it's. I can't believe this happened. So, anyway, I said, if you want to do this, I said, would you run again? He says, I probably would. I said, then your campaign for the next election starts today.
Right. It has to.
And it's not ads. It's not going to be ads. It's not going to be, because we're too partisan. You have to go out and make yourself a fixture in the community.
Yeah.
Branding, baby. Branding. It's all about
those doors, talking to important people, all that stuff.
Holding events, holding community events.
Too. Yeah.
That's the biggest, that's the, put your name, instead of putting it into slanderous ads on TV, hold safety events, hold free car seat, whatever, you know what I mean? But get your name out there in the community and let them see you doing stuff in the community. That's when you'll start to change.
That's true.
Because it's branding. And are you Eddie Murphy and the Distinguished Gentleman years old? Or that's an old movie.
Trading Places, how about that?
Oh, okay. See? All right. So Distinguished Gentleman.
No job.
You don't believe me?
Close to Thanksgiving.
Say that again.
Said it ain't cool to be no job turkey this close to Thanksgiving.
I don't know. Eddie, you were great. And then you went weird for a little bit. You redeeming yourself in cartoons or whatever. But he was a man in the 80s. Oh my gosh. I still quote Delirious to this day, right around here. And Delirious is better than Raw. Nobody at me on that because it's true. But he was in a movie called The Distinguished Gentleman where he is essentially just a punk and gets elected because he has the same name as a white congressman. I think it was a congressman in a district that had just died.
Oh, wow.
And he ran on the name and never showed his face during the election. And then by then it was too late, and he was sworn in. He won the election. It was sworn in. So and I'm like, that's exactly how it works, because the reason that the incumbent wins is because it's name recognition. So if you want to run for office, y'all get out there and get in your communities, and all of those campaign donations that come into you, put them back into the community as community service. And now you're being a responsible steward of their donation dollars, but you're also recognizing yourself as a brand. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I'm available for consult. So, which was never something I ever thought that I would do, but I got asked, and I just look at it. You know, I'm a marketer and business person is my background. So like, it's really business. You're running a business. A campaign's a business.
It really is. It really is. It's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, even on other issues, you know, a lot of politicking is very business related.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All government's a business.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Which is why I wasn't mad that a businessman was in, you know, we had a businessman running it. Yeah. And look what happened. Right. So, and that's very valid. Yeah. So in Washington, last time I was up there teaching, I met with the sheriff, doing a little advising and chatting with them and stuff. And we didn't realize, we were so wrapped in our conversation, we didn't realize that the restaurant had closed. This is the passive aggressive attitudes of our youth these days too, by the way. They came over, they took the glasses off the table. Oh, we're going to take the glasses off the table for you. Okay. Well, the TVs were still on and it was so loud, a lot of noise going on. So we just assumed that they were still open. Mm-hmm. And I get up to use the restroom, come back, and I realize, oh crap, they closed 30 minutes ago. And, you know, they're all kind of walking by and looking at us. I'm like, just tell us you're closed. We didn't, but the whole thing was the message that coming to take the glasses off the table was supposed to be the indication that we're closed. I'm like, really? Just say something.
No, you just say, hey, we're about to close. Like that. I've had that happen many times.
Yeah. And they didn't. But of course, then they, you know, had to look at us and play victim because we wouldn't leave and they couldn't close up. And I'm like, bro, just say something. Anyway, so I'm walking into my car and I've got the video. I recorded video immediately after it happened. Because here's always something to be suspicious or question truth. And this is, you got to do it on both sides, right? To be objective. Yep. If you see a video of an incident from a person recording it, and you're seeing the entire incident from beginning to end, and you can understand the entire context, it's probably staged. Because whenever you're in one of these situations, because yes,
because nobody's going to know when to turn the camera on.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've been in many of these situations. I was in DC on January 6th. I was on the airplane that made national news. It was because of me that made national news. I mean, so, and you can't get a camera out quick, you know, for this kind of stuff. And I certainly wasn't going to in this case. So I'm walking back to my car. The parking lot was empty. I'm hyper aware, situational awareness. I teach this in my defensive mindset classes. So I'm looking around, I see these two guys, I don't know, maybe 25 yards out, maybe 50 yards. I don't remember. It's in the video, but I see them start walking toward me and there's no other cars in the parking lot. And then I see them separate. And that is a technique that attackers will use. It's called intimidate and confuse, where they're trying to disrupt you. And so you're watching both.
Way to look and they can come flank you. Yeah.
Correct. So I'm still watching. I pick up my pace a little bit. They pick theirs up, not to meet mine, but they pick it up and they separate farther. I'm like, okay, there's something going on here. My gut tells me something's going on here. So I move my my firearm from being concealed to open carry. Mm-hmm. Because I had my phone. Now my phone was in my pocket, but I had a pizza box in my hand and my key because I was leaving the restaurant. So I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to be limited in any way to be able to reach my firearm if I was going to be put in that position and need it.
Right.
So I hustle up, I get in the car, lock the door. I look over, there's a little car parked diagonal that I couldn't see as I was walking across. And I think, okay, maybe they're walking to their car. Now I don't wait to find out, you know.
Right.
I hit the gear shift and I take off. Well, it turns out as I take off, they come back together and take off. So they were up to something for sure. Because that wasn't their car. And so I went on, I did a video about this. I called the candidate for sheriff that I was meeting with. And he said, we just talked about we literally just talked about my defensive mindset class, kind of covering this kind of stuff. It was a trick.
Right.
Like, he goes, and then this happens. Holy crap. So, he actually posted about it on his social media and then asked me after this, he says, will you come teach that that, defensive mindset class?
Yeah.
And I said, absolutely, I will. So I'm heading back. I teach it Saturday. Actually, I'm leaving, hitting the road and heading up there. So, this guy starts popping off in the comments. Well, I hope you called 911. And somebody tagged me because he didn't tag me in this post. It's on Facebook.
What's that going to do?
So somebody tagged me in to answer it. And I did. And I said, there was no reason to call 911 because there wasn't a crime.
Yeah.
Because I put myself in a position using situational awareness to avoid a crime. And he came after me with the nastiest, condescending, victim blaming crap. I've got the screenshots. I'll send them to you if you want to see them. And this is the kind of crap that we women get from the conservative side all the time, especially cops. There is a reason that domestic violence survivors do not trust cops. And nobody talks about it. But I have rarely met, in fact, arguably, maybe nobody. I'd have to sit and think before I gave you a fair answer. But
so I don't, but I don't understand. Like, what would they criticize you for? Like
because I didn't call the cops, because I should have called the cops in that situation. If I felt like I was being threatened, I should have called the cops. I'm like you were going to be there in 10 seconds. You weren't.
Yeah.
You were not going to be there in time.
Any gun owner knows that when seconds count, the police are only minutes away.
And cops really know that too. He knew better because it turns out he was a retired county sheriff.
For the love of God. So he knows.
He knows better.
That tells me that there's another reason why he was criticizing you, because he knows better. Like,
but wait, there's more.
I don't understand the problem these people have with you. I want to know. But go. You said there's more. Go ahead.
So I said, I came back and I was real careful when I saw him come back on me. I'm like, ooh, I better use my words carefully here, because he made the comment. I'd have to look at the screenshot again. I'll send it to you if you want it. It's good stuff, actually. You probably do. You're probably like, Jesus Christ, this guy's a dick. At this point, I'm like, it's a trap.
It's a trap.
And I get real careful with my words, because what I did initially have typed out was, your lazy asses aren't going to get here in time to save me, so I better say myself.
You're not going to put the donuts down quickly enough. I'm just kidding. I have nothing against most cops. But
anyway,
y'all do be eating those donuts, though.
Y'all do be eating them donuts for real. And so I was very careful with my words, because I was also going to say, and now the legislation has been passed to actually back that up, right? Because it has there. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, I see where this is going. So I did what I felt I needed to do in that situation to be able to be in a position to best. I'm a firearms instructor. I know how this game works. Mm-hmm. So I start digging more and I'm looking. So he's a retired sheriff. Okay, this and that. So the next day I get a message from this sheriff's candidate, that one of the guys inside the sheriff's department that likes him, because he's running against the guy gets to run against the incumbent, because this guy was appointed. The one who's acting as sheriff now, the active sheriff now was appointed and is running as incumbent from Seattle. Never had any intention on coming over here. Odd coincidence, isn't it? So I get this message saying that the county sheriff's department wants to investigate me. Well, us, meaning him too, but particularly me, because I went from concealed carry to open carry, which says in the Washington state statute that yes, it is illegal to expose your firearm in a manner to threaten, intimidate, or coerce, blah, blah, blah. However, it also goes on to say, it doesn't say this, but verbatim, but it says it is legal to expose your firearm if you feel your life is in danger.
Right.
So I didn't even draw it, mind you. This was just in my holster, which is still under that vague written law. They could have tried. And so I think that's what they were going to try to get me on. So, because it turns out that this guy, this retired sheriff, doesn't like the candidate running against the incumbent. So they were going to try to investigate me or discussed investigating me at any rate.
Yeah, because you're tied to this guy that they don't like.
Because of political agenda. Yeah. Yeah. And this is the town that was so sweet and nice and kind years ago. Like I don't even recognize it anymore. And so I call up my US Law Shield guys. Shouts to those guys.
That's
Big
what
time.
I use.
I'm a USCCA instructor, and I know there's no love lost between those two. I say get both. They both serve different benefits. But I'll tell you what, I've had a couple incidences now with US Law Shield. I had it before I was in this world. I don't know why you wouldn't have it. I think you're an idiot if you don't have it, but because it's self-defense insurance, it's not just gun insurance.
Yeah,
but,
it's not just gun. Yeah,
correct. So I call them up. My daughter's on it, on my policy in college, so she has to whoop a bitch's ass at college. You're coming after her. And I have my daughter's
it's specifically called "whoop a bitch's ass."
Whoop
insurance.
a bitch's ass. It is actually. I'm just like, I feel like I need to start an insurance company
WABA,
just so I can have
WABA, whoop a bitch's ass.
I'm going to call Liberty Austin and say, we need the WAPA policy. Get on that, girl.
That's right.
So yeah, they'll cover your kids in school, even high school, even elementary school, like cover your kids, because if they have to stand up and defend themselves in school, they'll protect them too. It's great. Anyway.
That makes sense.
I'm not being paid. I swear. I just really believe in them. So, and here's part of I have two big reasons. Well, many, but these are the two biggest reasons why. First of all, I call up Matt Kilgo, who is the guy here in Georgia, who I love, and it's great. And here's also a great example of regional and cultural response as well,
okay.
to gun laws. So Matt's like, what? This is bullshit, and so he goes on, he says, we would cover you for that. He says, let me call corporate. They're going to be pissy about it, but let me call them. So he calls, he goes, well, it happened in Washington, so I need to connect. I won't be your guy. Washington won't be, right? Because I have the 50 state coverage. And Matt goes off about how ridiculous this is, and the Washington State guy's like, well, we need to make sure that your permit is up to date. And I'm like, no, we don't. But it was just, and it's not because he supports it. It's because he is a lawyer and all.
Yeah,
this
he has.
He is doing his job as an attorney,
yeah,
and doing his job as an attorney for U.S. Law. I do not poo-poo his angle, but it was interesting to see the difference because they know what court systems they're going to be in. You know what I mean? And how they respond. And so it's just that part of that circling back to that cultural response to Second Amendment stuff. But yeah, so no crime. I didn't have to defend myself, and they were still going to represent me in court if it had come to that. So big shouts to them for that. It is honestly worth your $150 a year. Like, just get it. It's
that is a perfect example of why anybody should have this type of insurance. I mean, especially if you carry, but I mean, again,
it sounds funny. We were totally sound like a commercial now, and it's not the case. It's not. That was a big one. So, I'll tell you the second one in a minute. And this is actually a big deal. But he says to me, well, we need to get, I said, no, we don't. He goes, well, if you're going to be up here teaching, you should really have it. I said, no, I don't. I said, it's a gross. He starts telling me what kind of misdemeanor. I said, I know it is. It's like Class C misdemeanor. Like, it's not even a gross misdemeanor.
Wait, like what is not having your license or
not having a permit to conceal carry, right? Because you can legally open carry in Washington State. You can't conceal carry without a permit. And they're one of the states that I call it the pay to play. You just pay for the permit and background check. You don't have to have the class to do that. So I said, sir, there's no way that this is not going to sound arrogant. It's not my intention when it comes off. But I said, did you Google my name before you had this conversation with me? Like, do you know who I am? And not like, do you know who I am?
Do you know who I am?
Yeah, I hate saying that, but in this context, it'll make sense. So hopefully your listeners are going to be like, really, did she just say that? Hear me out.
My name has currency.
Yeah, not really.
My people are pretty laid back, so they won't.
My name doesn't have currency, but my beach ball size lady nuts do. So, and I said, I don't think you understand, sir, because I know that this misdemeanor literally is going to be a fine, probably, and it still wouldn't even keep me from getting a permit.
Wow.
I said, so I'm willing to take the L in court and blow this up and make them look absolutely ridiculous that they came after a woman over something so insignificant when I was in a position where I had to potentially put myself in a position to defend myself. I'm willing to take that loss in court and put them on blast, because I will put this in the hands of people like you and Beth Bauman. I'll put this in the hands of people that know where to get it heard. And there is nothing good going to come out of that sheriff's department when I'm done with them. And then I'll negotiate it down, plea bargain it down to community service and teach women how to shoot for free.
Yeah, there you go.
And he just stopped. There's this little pause and he says, well, you have that right to do that. And, so I kind of giggled because he's doing, I do not poo-poo him or begrudge him his job at all. He was doing his job. And
he's supposed to do that. Yeah.
I'm the person who's willing to fall on that sword, especially over, okay, let me rephrase that, over that butter knife, because that's really what it would be in that case, in that particular situation, to absolutely make an ass of these people and show how corrupt the systems are and to show how ridiculous gun control laws are. Like, I'd be willing to do it. He now wants me to work on his podcast with him about gun laws. I'm meeting with him when I go back up there. Good. So I'm like, are you sure? You might want to do a little research on me first, because I'm a little inflammatory. You might want to check on that first. So that was disturbing to see. Now, I didn't expect anything to come from it. They didn't either, because what kind of optic is that, especially in a period, but especially in an election year? If I were the police or the sheriff, I wouldn't want to touch that, which is what happened. And now I can talk about it because we're all in the clear. But about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I get a call from a friend of mine who he was really upset. A neighbor of his, female neighbor of his, he was on the road working, called him panicking because she had been arrested or detained or whatever, charged with domestic assault. Her ex beat her up. She was trying to defend herself. This is in Pennsylvania. They show up, the cops show up, and she's worried. She owns a gun, so she's worried about all this kind of stuff. And she gets cited for abuse because he had a mark on him, which that happens a lot in trying to defend herself. That actually happens more than people think it does.
Yeah, of course.
And she's freaking out. She doesn't know what to do. She was just trying to defend herself, all this kind of stuff. And so he doesn't know what the hell to do. So he called. I'm the only person he knows that's has any connection to working with abuse. What the hell do I do? And I said, I don't know what the hell to do. I don't know what your laws are. I don't know why she got charged. I got questions. So I call the 1-800. I call US Law Shield. I'm like, weird situation. It's not me. They like my defensive, US Law Shield likes my defensive mindset class. So I've worked with them in the past on that, where I've gone and taught it and they've come and, done stuff with me. I said, I work with y'all, with this. I'm in a position, I don't know what to do. And I know that it's not me. I'm not in that state, but do you have any answers for me? And they said, we don't know. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah.
Less than 15 minutes later, I had a call from the head Pennsylvania US Law Shield attorney helping me with her.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Most companies wouldn't do. I know this will sound like a commercial, but
I know, isn't it terrible?
I didn't even know that I just went with them because I like what they provided and whatever. I knew that I needed it.
They're local.
Yeah, and most companies would never do that. Like, no, if we're not making money from this person, we're not going to help. But that tells you that these are true believers. Like, they actually believe in what they're doing. They're making money. Of course, you got to make money.
Oh,
but
sure. They are.
Yeah, but they also agree with the mission.
Yeah. It was really cool. And he did not have to help me, and especially to the level that he did. And it was really cool. So I'm grateful for that. And that is all about what I do. So
that makes me feel better about going with them.
Yeah, me too. And that's why it makes me feel better. Sounding like a freaking commercial, like I'm out there prophesying for him. Because I'm like, y'all are idiots if y'all don't have this. I mean, these guys are actual, genuine, decent people. I'm sure that there's probably an apple or two in the bushel that are buttholes or whatever, but because that's always the case. But for the most part, I've not had, with their lawyers in the States, I've not had a negative experience. I've not had anything.
Well,
every state.
I have no problem shouting them out then. Now, if they did want to sponsor my podcast and have me shout them out, I wouldn't be opposed. But even so, like that's awesome. That's really good. Like it's a really decent thing to do, because you got somebody in a horrible situation and they were still willing to help.
Yeah. And that kind of leads into kind of a lot of what the work with my organization is I get these calls, DMs, texts tagged in posts a lot about, you know, a woman and being abused, or I know somebody that's being abused, or I think she's being abused, or, you know, all of these types of things. What do I do? How do I help? You know, and it's a rough space to be in. And when you have somebody in your life that's like that, and you feel helpless, because you're going to stay helpless, because you can't just pull them out, you know, and so I get these questions a lot and work with this every single day. And then my organization also helps to fund. So I don't get paid with what I do, and I'm very transparent. If anybody requests to see my banking records, I'm happy to share them. Unlike Trump, which, you know what, good for him. Just as, look, let's be honest, he's just being petty.
Of course he is.
Yeah. He is being petty crocker in the kitchen, cooking some shit up just to be petty. That's the only reason. He doesn't have to, and he's not going to. And you know what?
That pot.
Oh, are you kidding me? They call me petty crocker. And it's always
popcorn. Petty cracker. Petty. That was good, huh?
I think I need a podcast, and we're going to call it Petty Cracker.
There you go. There you go.
Actually, total side note, I've always wanted one. I've always wanted to have a podcast that was with a black male, whatever, I don't care. We'll call it Crackers and Color People.
I would listen to that, definitely.
And just hit the real deal issues from, like, you know, just that real street level, and just be like, look, this is what it's really about. You know what I mean? And debunk or validate, you know, some of the stuff that's out there and things going on. Yeah, I just thought it'd be funny. They ain't ready for that, though.
No, not in 2022. No,
they ain't ready for that. So, so we also provide. I don't get paid, like I said. For women that do pay for my classes, that can afford to, 100% of that money goes back into a fund to help operate with a female, but also without a paycheck. I have volunteers that work with me right now. So that's why sometimes it takes me longer to get back to people, because I'm kind of, for the most part, I have somebody else with the website. And then I just have an assistant that I just started having help me last week. So I'm kind of a one-woman show, but anybody wants to edit video for me, volunteer, hit me up, because I'd be doing a lot more content if I had an editor. We provide scholarship funding for domestic violence survivors, sexual assault survivors, and single mothers that can't afford the training. So whether that's with me or with somebody else in a different state. So we just funded, recently we funded 10 women in Philly to get trained, sent $1,000 to that firearms instructor, and she felt awful. She's a survivor, and she felt bad. She's like, I wish I could do it for free. I'm like, girl, you got to feed your kids. Like, I'm not expecting you to do it for free. I'm blessed to be in a position where I can. You're not. So we paid her $1,000, and she trained 10 women, got them all trained up, and then when they're ready for their permits, they'll reach out to me and we'll pay for their permits as well.
Nice.
And then we just did $500 to a combatives studio right outside of Atlanta. And this guy you should have him on. He's great.
Yeah.
He is, yeah. I mean, how we connected through some mutual friends. Actually, you should have my friend Fred and his daughters on Survival Sisters. They're black girls that are like changing the narrative about self-defense and using guns. But they straight up Survival Sisters. I'll talk to Fred and get you their number. But listen, y'all, they're not just learning how to shoot guns. These girls are straight up running ops in the woods.
Wow.
Oh, they're in my go. Shit goes down, the shit hits the fan, and everybody got to hop in the van to go. They're on my van, man. These girls are like, they can run some guns, but not only that, they can run them at night. They can run them in tactical team. Like, they do all of this stuff for legitimate training. And now they're learning first aid. I'm going to teach them. I'm an herbalist. So I'm going to teach them, dirt medicine, like herbal. Like, what if you get stuck in the woods and something happens and you need to find what herbs you can use as medicine or whatever. I do that. So I'm going to teach them that. Yeah, they're cool. I mean, they're no joke. Anyway, so I met this guy through them, and he came on a live stream with me. And he had me like this. He said, ladies, if a man you don't know is approaching you, they only want to take something from you. Whether it's your purse, something else, or your life. But there's no reason that they should be. When I was like, I'm listening.
Yeah.
Let's hear what else you have to say.
Yeah.
So he gets it, right? He's got daughters, you know, and he's been a lifelong hand-to-hand and combative study. So he teaches scenario training to families, and like single moms and their children, and like how to use code words. So if somebody approaches, that mom can yell the code word so the kids know it's time to take off until mom comes, until they hear mom only. You know, teaches them how to get out of trunks, teaches them how to specifically for domestic assault victims, how to use combatives, because it's different. Like you got to kind of move a little bit differently. You want to just de-escalate verbally at all costs first, because shit gets hot quick in those situations, because they're intimate. Anyway, so he does the hand-to-hand side of this stuff that I just think is amazing, and I love it. He even has somebody come in and teach etiquette to young ladies.
Wow.
And people are like, how is this going on? I'm like, because if they understand proper etiquette, they understand how to be assertive.
Right.
And assertion leads to not being a victim. I'm like, I am here for it. I mean, it's
because they want an easy target.
Correct. Exactly. So we just donated $500 to him for 5 ladies to get training for a month. And then they generously made it 8 ladies for the $500. So they added a few extra seats to that. So that's some of the other work I do, trying to help get women trained in arms. So we want to change that narrative about gun ownership in women. We want to change really what that looks like and what the approach is for domestic violence victims, especially. But we also, I absolutely, it incenses me that we, as blessed to be guaranteed to have the right of self-defense in this country, through the Second Amendment, that we are being forced to pay to exercise the right of human right of self-defense. Nobody ever should have to pay to have the right to defend themselves, especially women, and women that can't afford it, because we are disproportionately affected by those laws. You know, we are, like I said earlier, we're it's the great equalizer, you know, and they're taking away our ability to defend ourselves, but then they're taking away everything that they want us to depend on at the same time. And that's a huge problem. So I know we didn't kind of get down that about how laws affect women in other ways. I can go into that if you want. I just realize I digressed from that, but
that's okay. Because I mean, at this point, I mean, you do realize that you got to come back on, right? You know, I
would love to, but listen, everybody says that. Nobody ever has me back on because they're like, man, this is crazy and I can't handle this stuff. And they're like,
oh no, you're my kind of crazy. You're coming back on. I mean, I wish we had more time. If I didn't have to go, we could keep going. But I mean, I definitely want to have you. There's so much I want to talk to you about. Believe me.
Thank you. Yeah. In fact, I got a text message coming in. I just came back from New York Fashion. Oh, do you have a minute? Can I share this with you? Because this was the coolest thing ever. Not gun related, but kind of. So I have a friend. He is he's a public speaker. He's great, and he might be a good guest for you too. His name is Earl Granville, and he lost his leg in Afghanistan 14 years ago. He's got a really interesting story, and he's a public speaker. Speaks all over. He helps to work with veterans to help give them purpose past their being a veteran. Blah blah blah. He ended up becoming a model in this fashion show for New York Fashion Week for a company called Limitless, Limbless. And so I went up to, he's like, I don't know anything about this world. I'm like, you know, this is literally my background. Like, this is my lane. And so I went up to assist him, and it was cool being there. But I learned there's a whole world of adaptive clothing that has started being made in the last 4 or 5 years. And this show is helped to showcase these designers. But like Tommy Hilfiger has had it on their website for a couple of years now.
Oh, wow. Right.
I didn't know that. Zappos has worked with Crocs and Sorel, which I was like, damn, those Sorel boots had zipper, like adaptive to zip up the sides to get it. I'm like, I could use those because I have a hard time getting into some hiking boots sometimes. So it was interesting to see this. Right? So all this adaptive clothing and this and that. So of course he loves what I do. So he's telling me like, you know, she does this kind of stuff. And they're like, really? And this is in New York. So a few of them were receptive, a couple of them not so much. These were all women that were just women and men. I talked to mostly the women that were disabled. So a lot of them in wheelchairs, and they're like, "Oh, well, we can't shoot." I'm like, "The hell you can't?
Yeah,
you can teach me how to use a gun? Sure can."
Mm-hmm.
What? Yeah, and girls, you probably need something going on up in the state. And they're like, yeah, you know, because she went off the stupid rail with that, not selling ammo and stuff. But one of the ladies that I talked to, she's the one that just texted me actually. She is a reality TV producer for some of the bigger shows, we'll leave it at that, in LA. And last week she was robbed at gunpoint.
Oh, wow.
She now wants me to come to LA to teach her how to use a gun.
Full circle, what you said at the beginning. When it comes to you personally.
When it hits you different.
You get it.
And she's never been exceptionally, she's very libertarian-esque. She goes, it's a little hard for me to live here. And, but she goes, I'm not full blown right. She goes, but I struggle. And she said, but that was it last week. I'm like, it usually is. Like, I guess she wants to look at moving and stuff. I mean, I don't blame her. I don't either. So it's thank God nothing happened to her. And it's sad that it takes something like that happening before we get into that space, and, before we realize we've got to do something. And thank God it ended well in her situation. But how many has it not,
Yeah, exactly.
So like the runner gal, which we'll talk about that later. Cause I got questions.
Yeah.
Billionaire heiress, your husband was awfully insensitive the next day.
Ooh. Okay.
I'm not saying, I'm just saying, so, so yeah, so one of them runs this group called Women on Wheels for women in wheelchairs and, out of New York. So I'm going to teach my defensive mindset class to them. And, yeah, I never expected to have this lane in this kind of thing, but, there's obviously clearly a big need. And when you think about it, well, of course there is.
Yeah.
I mean, who's actually disproportionately affected even more than just women or domestic violence victims? Handicapped people, right?
Yep.
Especially handicapped women. And so I'm really looking forward to working with some of these women to get them trained as well. So yeah, that's kind of cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we definitely got to talk about all this stuff. It might take a few times to get through all the stuff that I want to talk to you about. But before we sign off, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you?
So you can find me on, I'm most active on Instagram, and you can find me at @WeTheFemale_official. If you are so inclined, my random shit posting and inflammatory, controversial statements, Stilettos and Shotguns, but that would be Stilettos and Shotguns 3.0 because I'm on my third account after being shut down at 18,000 and 12,000 people, which was frustrating because that was my primary line of fundraising. That account was. So that's hurt me quite a bit. And you can also find me here on Twitter, I should say, real_SNS, capital S, lowercase n, capital S. And then I'm on Facebook as well. Stilettos and Shotguns, We the Female. You can also go to my website, wethefemale.org. If you donate, that would be awesome. All of that money goes right to help to women to get trained that can't afford it. So, and I'm a 501c3. So it is,
Sweet.
So it is tax deductible and things. So, and if any of you ladies, you yourselves that listen, if you're in a situation where you know that you're not being treated right, even though you might not classify it as abuse, abuse doesn't always have to be physical.
Right.
In fact, most of the most damaging abuse is actually verbal. And if your gut after listening to this tells you anything is off about your situation, reach out to me. Go through my website. You can reach out to me and we will help you, get you some resources to get you some help. And for those of you that suspect that somebody might be in a situation, again, reach out to me. I do live streams talking about how to tell if somebody's faking it or not too, because that's an uncomfortable truth, that conversations I have to have. But then I also do them talking about how to help women when they're in those situations, and because it's not an easy situation to help with, and you want to solve it for them,
of course, but
you can't. But you have to be able to help them figure out how to do it for themselves. So that's some stuff I do. So reach me if you need me. I'm here to help you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining the program, and I can't wait to have you back on.
Thank you so much for having me. I've had a blast. Awesome. And thank you for putting up with my shenanigans.
I loved them.